I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Old's Oscar Countdown. And like I said, for the past few episodes, we're in the thick of it. This is one of the most hectic, chaotic periods of the Oscar season before the Oscar nominations come out. There are so many guilds, there's so many precursors, and it's my job to take all that information and piece it out and make it for you guys so you can understand the Oscar race a little bit better. But if you're new to the show, what I do every single week is I break down a different category, or now as we get a little later, multiple categories, and I talk about what I think is going to get nominated at the Oscars, and then once the nominations come out, I predict what I think is going to win the Oscars. We have a lot of fun at the show. It's been really crazy, and these past sort of weeks I did a separate episode for the Golden Globes reaction, which was a lot of fun. Again, all the guilds are out now, so we can talk about a lot of the sort of technical categories, but also another key sort of precursor. Were two things that have happened since the last video: BAFTAs and DGAs. DGAs I'll talk a little bit in relation to BAFTAs, but really this is going to be the major portion of the video is going to be the BAFTAs and my reactions to those nominations. But we're also going to be talking about a bunch of different categories, all the design categories. We're talking about best costumes, best production design, and best makeup and hairstyling, which I think are going to be really interesting, and see how much of the overlap versus no overlap, and see how certain films do. I think will actually tell us a lot about their Oscar chances. That being said, let's jump into the BAFTA reactions. The way I'm going to sort of structure this, because there are so many categories, is looking at sort of the main ones: your actors, your actresses, your directors, whatnot. And I think that if you don't know, the BAFTAs is the British Academy Film and Television Awards, I believe, and that's sort of a lot of the British members of the Academy who make up the Oscar voters. They have their own sort of award, so this can tell us a lot versus, say, this is more important than, say, maybe the Golden Globes, because the Golden Globes, while they're televised, while it sort of starts to campaign for a lot of people, it's still no Oscar voters, where this is actually a lot of Oscar voters. Not all of them, because the American population consists of most of the Oscar voters, but there are a lot of international members, including the British members. And some surprise, I'm going to start off with Best Supporting Actress, because that's kind of the one I'm very curious about, because Regina King, the supposed frontrunner, did not get in again. She didn't get in at SAG, which was very surprising. She didn't get in at here. And now we're seeing sort of what to do, and we're seeing parallels of other years. We don't know how it's going to play out. It really depends for me on the strength of the film. If you look at the BAFTAs, we knew If Beale Street Could Talk wouldn't be a sort of a BAFTA kind of film. It only got in for, I think, I want to say Best Score, and I think something else. I'm not even sure if it got in for Best Writing. It didn't get in for Best Supporting Actress, didn't get in for Best Film. So, the film didn't do well, so we can sort of excuse that there. And versus, say, the Golden Globes, where If Beale Street Could Talk did do well in terms of nominations at the Globes, which is why they wanted to reward that film with Regina King. But really, the sort of Oscar landscape we're going into is that Regina King will win the Golden Globe. She'll probably win the Critics' Choice Award, but will she win the Oscar? I think that for me, in my situation, is, say, someone like Amy Adams or even Rachel Weisz wins Best Supporting Actress at SAG. We'll say Amy Adams does. She wins Best Supporting Actress at SAG, and then she wins again at BAFTAs because she was nominated, and Regina King was not. So, say the person who wins SAG and BAFTA are the same person, I'll probably go for them for the Oscars, just because those are the industry sort of precursors. But if they split, I could maybe go to Regina King. If you remember, this happened a few years ago with Sylvester Stallone, where he won for the Golden Globes, but didn't even get in for SAG or BAFTA. But although unfortunately those split, I believe that was the year of, I think that was Idris Elba for Beast of No Nation, and then Mark Rylance for BAFTA, and then Mark Rylance went up to go on and win the Oscar. So we have to be careful. We have to really treat these industry awards seriously. We can't just think Regina King's the front where it's over, it's done, because she really missed out on even a nomination here. I think was pretty crucial for her not to get in. So I think right now, if the same person, whether it be Rachel Weisz or Amy Adams or Huna, wins both SAG and BAFTA, I think they have a very good shot at getting the Best Supporting Actress Oscar. And I hope it's Amy Adams personally, I guess, because I'm a fan of hers. Best Supporting Actor, I think Mahershala Ali sort of has it in the bag in terms of the win. Richard E. Grant could sort of upset maybe at SAG and throw a wrench into the race, but I still think Mahershala could pull up on top as long as sort of Richard E. Grant doesn't pull ahead. I just think because the Green Book's so much more of a stronger film than something like Can You Ever Forgive Me. And then really that sort of last slot for Best Supporting Actor, you're looking, for me, it was sort of between Sam Rockwell and Adam Driver. Well, now Adam Driver's actually gone to the 4th slot for me. Adam Driver has sort of gotten everywhere he needs to be. He's like Timothée Chalamet. They've sort of just been hitting all their marks. I think they're going to get in. And it's sort of that 5th slot. The one sort of surprised me was Sam Elliott not getting nominated in a couple places, which is, maybe surprising, less surprising maybe so at BAFTAs. But I think that last slot's going to go to Sam Elliott or Sam Rockwell. The difference being, I think I will give it to Sam Elliott, just because both of them are pretty comparable in the sense that they have very little scenes of the movie. They don't have a huge impact, but I think Sam Elliott's character maybe has a little bit more of an impact to the story. Plus, I think that A Star Is Born is just a stronger film than Vice. So I think that while I like Sam Rockwell, while he just sort of won an Oscar, I think they'll want to give it to the respective veteran in Sam Elliott. And then Best Actress, I think this was actually surprising as we've gone along, because it's really that 5th slot that we're not so sure about. We know it's going to be Glenn Close and Lady Gaga, Melissa McCarthy, but for that 5th slot, it's sort of between, Emily Blunt for Mary Poppins Returns, and Olivia Colman for The Favourite. She's going to get in, of course. But that 5th slot is going to go, I thought it was Emily Blunt for Mary Poppins Returns, but she didn't even get in for something like BAFTA, which is surprising. Instead, something like Viola Davis got in for Widows, who was a contender at one point, but then sort of dropped out of the race. So it made I think it's between Viola Davis, Emily Blunt, and Yalitza Aparicio for Roma. I think the Roma love has been strong. It hasn't died down. That's a film that sort of stayed strong, where Mary Poppins Returns has sort of been a hit or miss, especially at something like the Globes. But I think that Yalitza, especially if she has the Critics' Choice if she actually wins that could be a huge push for her for getting in for that nomination. However, I think someone like Emily Blunt, because of her dual nomination at SAG, really shows how much the SAG-AFTRA really loves her, and that's a huge voting block that will vote for her. It was surprising that she didn't get in at BAFTAs, but I still think that Emily Blunt maybe have the edge, unless maybe someone like Yalitza wins Critics' Choice. And then director, I think right now it's Spike Lee, Bradley Cooper, Alfonso Cuarón. And then actually my 4th slot will go to Peter Farrelly. He's been sort of showing up everywhere. He had a pretty good speech at the when Green Book won Best Comedy, and I think he also got in at DGAs, which was surprising. People thought, because the film wasn't heavily, seemingly directed, he wouldn't get in, but I still think the support of the film will sort of push him over the edge. Plus, he got that DGA nomination. And as of right now, I think I have Adam McKay in my final slot, but I'm debating between him and Yorgos Lanthimos. Yorgos Lanthimos obviously did very well here. Unfortunately, and sort of surprisingly, he didn't get nominated at DGAs. There's always going to be some sort of discrepancy. We know that before. I may go back to my sort of tried and true rule, which is, go to the guy that's been nominated before, which would be Adam McKay in that sense, people they like. He got nominated at DGAs. However, I think Yorgos has a very unique, distinct view, and I think that The Favourite may be just a bit of a stronger movie than Vice. So it may go to Yorgos or Adam McKay. I'm not sure. I'm sort of debating back and forth, but that's sort of the 5th slot. And then actor, I didn't talk about it. I think John David Washington right now has sort of secured his role over someone like Ethan Hawke, who tried to build up in critics' troops, but sort of got a couple surprise no nominations, and then that sort of didn't include him. But I think right now I'm confident in my 5 for Best Actor. All right, so let's move over. Those are my BAFTA nominations. They are important. We'll see who wins. That's going to be important too. But really, the interesting takeaway from this is just making the supporting actress race so much harder, and really Best Picture, because something like BlacKkKlansman has been doing very well over and over and over. And I look at my sort of grand nominations and look at things that need to get nominated. It needs to get in for screenplay. It needs to get in for editing. It needs to get in for director. And right now, BlacKkKlansman is the only film that's going to guarantee that. All of them. I think that A Star Is Born could get in for Best Screenplay and Best Editing, but it's probably not going to win either screenplay or editing. BlacKkKlansman is probably going to win Best Adapted Screenplay, probably not editing, but could maybe surprise with a picture, and maybe sort of Alfonso gets the director. Watch out for BlacKkKlansman. That's a movie that we sort of really had in front at the beginning of the race. I was never super confident in it, but has really sort of made a last push surge here, and I think is the kind of movie that they like to reward. And I think that even though the Globes didn't reward it, I still think that it's overperforming everywhere, and it will overperform at the Oscars. All right, going to best costumes, my first pick is The Favorite. This is from acclaimed costume designer Sandy Powell. If you don't know who she is, she's been nominated 12 times at the Oscars. She's won 3. She's worked with a bunch of different directors, and actually in 2015 she was nominated for Carol and Cinderella. So she has been nominated multiple times in 1 year, which I think is also going to happen this year. But going off from The Favorite, it is a period film, sort of these Victorian era period films, Elizabethan era period films have always been done very well at the Oscars. These sort of bigger, the dress, Pride and Prejudice, things like that. The sort of the big dress, the sort of big gowns, some of the period pieces like this are just so well respected within this industry, and I think The Favorite is a movie that's well liked. It's also photographed in a very unique way using fisheye lenses. It sort of makes the costumes really stand out in relation to the spatial awareness. And I think that the costumes are so elaborate, and from a respected costume designer, I think The Favorite's a favorite to get it and win, actually. The next costume here that I had is Black Panther. I think the charm of this movie is just like I said multiple times, the Afro-funk unique world that comes with this film, and the fact that there are so many different costumes and so many different vibrant colors that I think the costume designers will really appreciate. Next pick here is actually Bohemian Rhapsody, because I remember the likeness of everyone coming out of the Bohemian Rhapsody was all the crazy costumes. Freddie Mercury has this crazy party, which he has all these crazy costumes on. So you have this sort of unique, amazing costumes and breadth of costumes from Freddie Mercury contrasted with the sort of generic-ness of the band, or the 80-ness, I guess, of the band. But also you have sort of the iconic outfits, the sort of wife beater, jeans, Live Aid concert that's so iconic for Freddie Mercury. I think is going to really complement well. Really, people will remember it and appreciate that. Plus, it did very well. Similarly to Black Panther, got multiple nominations at the CDGs. Or I guess I think I'm confused for makeup and hairstyling. But both of them got nominated at the CDGs, which Costume Designer Guilds. I believe Bohemian Rhapsody got nominated for Best Period Film, and Black Panther got nominated for Best Fantasy Sci-Fi. And the next pick here, Mary Queen of Scots. This is a film that people have been clearly seeing because Margot Robbie actually showed up a couple of places at BAG, and I think at SAG and at BAFTA. So she could be surprised for Best Supporting Actress. It could be something like her or Claire Foy. You never know what that last slot is. Right now, I guess I'm maybe going with Claire Foy, but I'm not 100% confident in that. But I think the love of Mary Queen of Scots will go into a couple of these technical categories, but the most likely chance of it happening is in Best Costumes, just because of sort of, like I said, with The Favorite, these sort of traditional period, accurate, more accurate actually than The Favorite costumes of these historical figures. Then my last pick, also from Sandy Powell, will go to Mary Poppins Returns. I was hesitant at first to put Sandy Powell nominated twice, but I think because she's so well respected, it's happened before, that I think she's going to get it in, especially for a Disney film like Cinderella and Carol. Plus there's sort of the iconic Mary Poppins outfit, but there's so many different colorful, unique outfits going on here. With how Lin-Manuel Miranda is sort of done, and then versus sort of the traditional clothes, and then Mary Poppins sort of bright, vibrant clothes, and the kids' clothes. There's so many different elements and aspects to it that I think people really appreciate, and it's just a colorful, visual, imaginative film. And then some honorable mentions, I went with Crazy Rich Asians because of the sort of unique, sort of over-the-top, great dresses that are sort of emphasized in the film, even this beautiful wedding dress and the amount of money that was spent on it. And then Fantastic Beasts 2, The Crimes of Grindelwald, just because the first Fantastic Beasts was nominated for Best Costumes. However, I think this is a film that just nobody really likes, and the buzz has sort of died down on. Okay, let's move over into my next pick, or next category, sorry, which is going to be Best Production Design. So, Best Production Design, the first pick going to be Black Panther. Similar to costume design, the idea of this new world, the very unique sets are going on, being sort of the Wakandan castle, or Shuri's kind of unique tech area, or even just that sort of traditionalist waterfall scene. There's so many unique visual sort of sets that I think about this movie, and they're stuck into my mind. And if you appreciate this movie, you appreciate the boldness, the uniqueness of the world, I think that you'll appreciate the production design of this film. Next pick is The Favorite. Very similar, like I said, to costume design once again. The idea of using those fisheye lenses, I think what the film actually does very good is the idea of visual analysis and visual representation and sort of spatial awareness in a lot of that sense. The idea that there's only a few rooms that we go into. It's very much the house that is what we know, but the sort of sets that we do see are so detailed. The paintings on the wall, sort of the wallpaper, the carpets, everything, the sort of exquisite lining of everything. There's so much detail in these small sets. Plus, we know these sets. We recognize these sets. We've seen these sets multiple times. It has that sort of eerie kind of sense to the film because we are seeing the same thing almost over and over and over again. That really sort of you associate a lot of the times the production design to the film because it's not only has it been photographed with that unique fisheye lens, which we've never seen before, but there's also a lot of detail to it with sort of an added recognized spatial awareness. I think this is going to be a nomination for sure. And then next we have Mary Poppins Returns. I think that this is just because if you think about the movie and if you like the movie, sometimes I question right now, does the Academy really love the movie? But I think for some of these technical categories they do, especially for something like production design where there's so many facets of the movie that are significant to the production design. You think of the house is such an important part of the story and how that sort of, and the memories that are associated with that house. The bank is a very important part of the movie. Even Big Ben, they have the sort of animation sets, but we also have mixed that with the live action sets of the sort of Triple O Light, Fantastic Leary song scene with the light posts and that sort of old imaginative world, even with the park at the end. There's some of these really significant sort of poles and pillars that you can recognize and understand and remember of these production designs because they're interweaved with the story. I mean, the house is so much in part of the story. I don't want to ruin it, but it's sort of the idea of memories and nostalgia in a lot of ways, and at least that's what I got from it. And I think that because of the production design and the sets and the locations relationship to the story, I think people will remember it and people will nominate it. And the next pick here is actually First Man. And I forgot to mention actually the last one. This is from John Mayer, who's won 2 Oscars before. He's Rob Marshall's guy. They've won for Memoirs of Geisha, I think Chicago. So they're well respected, and he's also a well respected production designer. That reminded me because when I saw First Man, this is done by Nathan Crowley, who is sort of Christopher Nolan's guy. He's been nominated 4 times, I believe, for Dunkirk, and even sort of a less popular movie in terms of the Best Picture chances, which was Interstellar. So I think that this is a guy they appreciate. This is a guy they respect and they understand it and know his work. And while First Man isn't maybe a Best Picture winner, it could be sort of in a similar vein, or I think even stronger with something like First Man. Then First Man will be stronger than something like Interstellar, which Nathan Crowley got nominated for. But it's a big sort of sci-fi, not sci-fi, but space movie, the space race movie. It does a great job of having the NASA and the cars, sort of the period elements, but also making them real and tactile and documentary sort of style feeling to it, where you're in the action, you feel immersed in the world. I think the production designer Nathan Crowley did a very good job with that, and I think that the support of this film will be through the technical categories. And my last pick is actually Crazy Rich Asians. This may be a surprise to some of your people, but I think that it's going to be costume design or production design that Crazy Rich Asians is going to show support. I think that it got in for SAG Ensemble, it got in for PGAs. This is a movie people like. That's the the fact of the matter, and I think that it's not going to not get in for costumes, it's not going to get in for production design. I think it's going to get in for somewhere. I'm putting my money on production design just because of the sort of crazy mansions and the amazing cars, and there's a yacht scene. I mean, it's so much sort of rich, fancy fulfillment in a lot of ways that I think people will sort of latch onto that and really gravitate towards that, and sort of the elaborate sets that she's sort of coming into in Singapore. Very unique, and I think that the love of this film has to go somewhere. So where is it going? I think it's going to go for production design. It's got to get at least 1 nomination at the Oscars because it's been so loved everywhere else. And who knows? Maybe that Best Supporting Actress will go to Michelle Yeoh, or someone like a Claire Foy. Who knows? We have to make sure that this is a movie that got in for SAG Ensemble and got in for PGAs. This is a film that's respected and liked. And then some honorable mentions I have here. Roma, just because of sort of, if you've seen the movie, the sort of mopping scenes that's in that sort of driveway, I guess you would say, but it's kind of connected to the house. Certain hospital scenes, certain sets that sort of recognize to you, but I think that it's just not super glamorous and not super period. It's not really the focus of the period. I mean, you could almost set this in the 60s or the 80s. Personally, I wouldn't be able to tell because of, the maid sort of traditional attire has been significant. There's not sort of elaborate, very visual cues for production design, so that may hurt it. And I think I also have Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald, which actually won, the first Fantastic Beasts won for best production design, or did it win for best costume design? It might have won for best. I think it won for best costume design because it was Colleen Atwood, I believe. Anyways, the point being, it was nominated, and because it was Stuart Craig, he was nominated and didn't win. But I just think, similar to the last point, the Fantastic Beasts has the love has kind of gone down, and people have turned on the franchise as of right now. Okay, let's go into makeup and hairstyling, which is the first pick, being Vice. This is going to be 3 nominations instead of 5. The Oscars do that if you're unaware. But the first one going with Vice, just because of this man right here and his transformation. He's sort of pulling a Gary Oldman, where at his speech of the Golden Globes, one of the first people he thanked were his makeup and hairstyling people, just to really transform him. And yes, he put on all that weight, but it was a lot of the wrinkles and a lot of the hair that made him, and even Amy Adams with Lynn Cheney, because she didn't put on any weight. And so we're just transforming these people into these people that don't look like the real life people into these real life people, and making a convincing story. And that transformation, we saw, the makeup designer for Gary Oldman for Darkest Hour won last year, so we see a lot of times that can pair up, and I think Vice right now is a good chance to get nominated. Next pick here is actually Border. This is a Swedish film which not a lot of people have seen, and some people may say, oh, the MUAHS society didn't nominate this film, but if you know Oscar history, you know sort of recent years, they like these Swedish films, they like these sort of foreign films that have really unique makeup, and they will watch them and they will see them and they will appreciate them. I think Border falls into that category. If you remember previous films, it was A Man Called Ove, which was a foreign film nomination, but I think the more adept and sort of aptitude comparison would be with The 100-Year-Old Man Who Climbed Out the Window and Disappeared, which got nominated for makeup, and that's it. And kind of surprisingly, and no one thought about it, wasn't even nominated for any other Oscars. I think Border will be into that same sort of category. People really like the movie who have seen it. You don't want to say too much about it because it's sort of a unique story, and I think the people that will see it will like it, and the people will even see the trailer, for example, will appreciate the incredible makeup that's going on display throughout the movie. It's one of those movies where if you've seen it, it's like, oh, of course that's going to get nominated for Best Makeup. I've always been partial to A Man Called Ove and A 100-Year-Old Man, and they've sort of been showing this trend, so I think if anything, Border could surprise. And my last pick here is Bohemian Rhapsody. Actually, very similarly to Dick Cheney and Vice, it's a transformation to show Rami Malek as Freddie Mercury, and particularly the teeth. The teeth is such a huge thing for Freddie Mercury because it has these huge buck teeth, and in the film, that's such an actual part of the story, and sort of a lot to do with the transformation of Rami's. That's what he said when he put the teeth in. He was Freddie, and in a lot of ways, you recognize the teeth and how that sort of helps his whole character. I just think the Bohemian Rhapsody love will be strong as well, and I think it will get in here surprisingly. And then a couple of my honorable mentions I have here for Black Panther, because you think of Killmonger's sort of unique costumes, sort of makeup that's going on with his chest, and sort of all the different things going on. And superhero movies generally do well here, but there's not like a sort of full body, sort of green, sort of Gamora person that we've seen before, or Harley Quinn for Suicide Squad, or any of those guys. So that maybe sort of hurt against it. And I also think Mary, Queen of Scots, love of the film could go somewhere. It could go here because of that sort of all white, sort of very pale dyeing makeup that's associated with the film, especially with the Oscar favorite, with an Oscar favorite Margot Robbie. So we'll see about that. But right now, I'm going with those 3 for best makeup and hairstyling. That's about it. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Make sure you comment below. Let me know some of your favorite films that were sort of production design or design based, and what your thoughts were on the BAFTAs. I didn't touch about the DGAs just because I touched about it briefly because of Peter Farrelly and Yorgos not getting in. So I just didn't think it was needing of its own episode. I decided to put the BAFTAs here. Stay tuned. In the next couple of weeks, I'll be doing my final Oscars video, which will cover all my updated nominations, my final nominations, which will be a lot of fun. That's about it. Stay tuned next week for Best Editing, Visual Effects, and Foreign Film. I won't be doing the short category just because I don't know enough about them. That's about it. I hope you guys enjoy the episode, and until next time, stay tuned.